Maya Martin had always dreamed of flying. From her childhood, she had been fascinated by the planes that cut the sky, by the idea of escaping the constraints of the ground, by the freedom that aviation offered. Growing up in a small East Coast town, she had been nurtured by stories of black aviation pioneers, men and women like Bessie Coleman, who broke racial barriers to touch the skies. Maya remembered times when her father, a former military man, would tell her stories about the challenges African Americans faced in the most unexpected areas. Freedom is not a right that we are given, Maya. It is something that we take. Every beat of your heart must remind us of it, he often told her. It was this philosophy that pushed her to persevere in a world dominated by prejudices, to believe that she could reach heights that seemed, at the time, reserved for others. She knew the road would be strewn with pitfalls, but she never doubted her ability to succeed. Each flight, each rotation, each altimeter set and each communication with the control tower was a step closer to realizing his childhood dream, but also an act of resistance. At 32, she was one of the few black pilots to reach the position of captain at a major airline. Her colleagues, mainly white and male, respected her for her expertise, her precision and her legendary calm, even in the most tense situations. But Maya also knew that her success, as impressive as it was not simply a matter of technical skill. She carried with her the legacy of generations of people of color who had to fight for opportunities that should come naturally. Every flight, every interaction, every day was a silent affirmation that she was here to stay, that her dream was not an anomaly, but a sign of what was now possible. That morning, as usual, Maya got up before dawn. The flight she was going to pilot was from New York to Los Angeles, a route often taken by businessmen, celebrities, and influential people. The type of passengers who were used to flying first class, where leather chairs and gourmet meals seemed to symbolize the distance between worlds. For Maya, it was another day at work, another day doing what she loved, flying a plane and keeping her passengers safe. The flight, like the others, was not just a professional mission, but an opportunity to show that skill had no color. She ate breakfast in silence, checking the flight details one last time, making sure everything was in order. Her co-pilot, Emily, a vibrant blonde young woman who had just been promoted, soon joined her, and together they headed to the airport. They exchanged small talk about their day ahead, but Maya felt that little tension she felt before every flight. A familiar tension, which was not linked to fear, but to vigilance. Because she knew that, despite her expertise, a simple error in judgment could leave her vulnerable to prejudice. A smile, an awkward word or an accusatory look was sometimes enough to call his authority into question. The flight took off without incident, as planned. Passengers sat in the first-class cabin, enjoying the luxury of the plane. The dull sound of the engines and light vibrations were a pleasant contrast to the relative quiet of the cabin. Maya, after greeting her team, headed towards the cockpit, ready to sit in her captain's chair. She checked the instruments, listened to communications from the control tower, and took control. "Everything is in order," she whispered to Emily, who nodded, a glint of admiration in her eyes. Maya never had to prove anything to anyone, but that didn't stop her from feeling watched from time to time. But as they took flight, an unexpected event happened. A woman, seated in first class, suddenly stood up and approached one of the flight attendants. The woman was elegant, dressed in an expensive suit, her gaze hard and contemptuous. His attitude echoed a time when nobility of social status was seen as a shield against the world. She addressed the hostess in a loud and bold voice, not even caring about the embarrassment she was creating around her. "I refuse to fly with a black pilot," she said, crossing her arms, her expression frozen in icy arrogance. "I don't trust someone like her for my safety. That's out of the question." The hostess, taken by surprise and visibly unsettled, looked around, unsure of what to do. Maya, sitting in the cockpit, heard every word. Her heart sank. This was not the first time racist remarks had been made to him, but it was the first time it had happened so blatantly and publicly, at high altitude, in an enclosed space, where there was nowhere to escape. The stewardess approached the cockpit and knocked gently on the door. "Maya, we have a problem in first class. It seems that a passenger is refusing to fly because of you," she explained in a low but anxious voice. Maya took a deep breath, gathering her focus. She knew she had to act calmly and with dignity, without allowing the situation to get out of hand. She also knew that any impulsive reaction would have consequences on her image, and that this could become a dangerous precedent. She stood up slowly, adjusted her pilot jacket, and headed to first class. With every step, she felt the intensity of the situation. When she arrived, the woman first looked her up and down, contempt palpable in her eyes, as if Maya was just a bothersome obstacle in her perfect world. There was no surprise, no astonishment, just an instant judgment, a rejection that suggested that the mere fact that a black woman was at the helm of this plane was an anomaly. "Miss, you said you don't want to fly with me? I'm the pilot of this flight. If you have any concerns about safety, I can provide you with all the information you need," Maya replied in a firm but calm voice, mastering each syllable as if each word was a bullet that she had to shoot with precision so as not to miss her target. She knew that she did not have to justify her existence, but that every gesture, every response must be a demonstration of her authority and her dignity. The woman burst out laughing, a dry, disdainful laugh, as if the very idea of Maya in the role of pilot was a ridiculous joke. "A black pilot? It's a joke, isn't it? You're just a figurehead, you don't deserve to be here. I demand that I be replaced immediately." His words were like daggers, piercing Maya's reality with the acidity of judgment she had encountered too often in her career. Maya felt anger rising within her, but she chose to control it, once again. She had learned over the years that rage never led to victory in such situations. She straightened up, adjusted her uniform, and replied, her voice firm but calm. "I'll tell you one thing, this flight is going to leave as scheduled. If you have a problem with me, there is a way for you to get off the plane before it's too late." The tension rose instantly. Several passengers had begun to whisper among themselves, some amazed by the woman's audacity, others shocked by the situation. But Maya remained steadfast. This wasn't the first time she faced racial prejudice and stereotyping in places where her expertise always seemed to need to be questioned. But this time, something inside her was turned. She was not going to give in to what she saw as an attempt at public humiliation. Another passenger, a businessman in his 50s, suddenly stood up, his face marked by anger. "I find this unacceptable," he said in a clear, strong and authoritative voice. "If you have a problem with the pilot, you can leave the plane. But we have confidence in her." His statement echoed throughout the plane, a tangible sign of support, but also of rebellion in the face of injustice. Behind him, a middle-aged woman, visibly shocked by the passenger's attitude, also intervened. "It's shameful," she added. "You can't judge someone by the color of their skin. She is here to lead us, not for you to decide her worth." The situation was becoming more and more tense, but the hostess, having realized the extent of the situation, quickly intervened. "Madam, we ask you to leave the plane immediately. If you refuse, we will be forced to call security." His words were firm, but Maya knew the woman would not leave without resistance. There was a wounded pride in his eyes, a rage hidden beneath his scornful smile. Under increasing pressure from passengers and crew, the woman finally stood up, casting one last contemptuous look at Maya. She walked out of the first-class cabin muttering insults, but no one followed her. A heavy silence fell on the plane. It was the kind of heavy silence, the one that precedes a great upheaval. But this silence was not only awkward or uncomfortable. It was that of a collective awareness, of a silent solidarity which had formed among the passengers. They were now united in their support of Maya, in their refusal to allow injustice to fester in this space. Once the situation was resolved, Maya calmly returned to the cockpit, where Emily was waiting for her with a smile of admiration. "You handled that well," she said, her voice sincere. "You are amazing." Maya nodded without saying much. She didn't need congratulations. She knew she had acted with dignity, as she always had in a world that sometimes took pleasure in reminding her that she was not supposed to occupy this place. The flight continued without incident. Upon landing, as the plane gently touched down, the story of the racist incident quickly made the rounds in the media. Journalists were waiting on the tarmac to question him, eager to collect statements. But Maya, faithful to her calm and reserve, did not let herself be carried away by the enormity of the situation. In front of the cameras, she spoke simply, with a tone that was both determined and humble. "What you saw today is unfortunately not an isolated incident," she said, her gaze turned to the camera, then towards the passengers. "This is an example of the systemic racism that exists in our society, not just in aviation. But today I want to remind everyone that we all have the right to follow our dreams and succeed, no matter our skin color." His words resonated deeply, not only in the corridors of the airport, but also in the homes of television viewers who followed the incident. Journalists, impressed by his dignity and calm, reported his remarks in detail. Social media went viral, and the hashtag #RespectMaya went viral within hours. The next day, thousands of people demonstrated against racism in airports, demanding more diversity and inclusion in professional sectors. Calls to action were heard everywhere, demanding reforms in employee training and better representation of minorities in all areas. Airlines, under pressure, began announcing diversity awareness and training programs for their employees. Zero-tolerance policies towards discriminatory behavior were put in place. Maya, meanwhile, became a symbol of resilience, a silent heroine who took a stand against intolerance. This incident, which began as an isolated act of racism, turned into a watershed moment for society. He showed that silence in the face of injustice was no longer acceptable. Solidarity arose even from the most tense situations, and thanks to Maya, human dignity was remembered with force and clarity. Maya Martin was no longer just a pilot. She was now a hero, a role model for all those who believed in equality and human dignity. His name became synonymous with courage, calm in the storm, and the certainty that it was possible to overcome any barrier, no matter how high.